Yeah, in this video, we are going to be looking at how to calculate sales after discount. And we started off with percentage made easy and some of the basic introduction as regards what percentage is all about. So we're going to be taking some few questions and we'll be able to kind of like formulate a formula to help us solve these things better. We are going to be trying it mentally, but at the same time, we are going to approach it using formula. So the first question says the price of a laptop is 400,000. How much will it cost if a 15% discount is applied, excluding any sales task? So the best way to approach a question like this is trying to understand mentally, is trying to understand what percentages is, right? So you have to like try as much as possible to break it to the minimum point where you feel you are comfortable solving questions like this. So I can start with trying to get 10% of 400,000. Now, if I'm trying to get 10% of 400,000, it means that I'm going to be moving one my point to this point, right? So which means 10% of 400,000 is about 40,000 naira, if I'm not mistaken. That's what it means. So 10% of 400,000 is about 40,000. So now, what is 5%? What is 5% of 400,000? So since 10% is 40, so 5% will be half of 40, right? So that would be 20,000. Makes sense. So which means my 15% will be what? So 10 plus 5 is 15. So which means 10% is 40,000, 5% is 20,000. So 15% will be the sum of 10 and 5%, which is 60,000, right? So it's very, very straightforward. It's not something you have to stress over. Now, for me to get that 15% of 400,000 is 60,000, and they told me the price of the laptop was discounted, which means I'm going to be subtracting 10%, 15% out of that 400,000. But mentally, if you don't want to kind of like do it like this, you can get your calculator and do something like your 400,000 times 15%. 15% is 0.15. And I'm very, very sure you'll still be getting 60,000. Very, very straightforward, right? So what you need to do is for you to get the actual price, right? The actual price of the laptop after getting this 15% discount is going to be 400,000 minus 60,000. And don't forget, this 60,000 is 50% of um 400,000. Then the answer should be 340,000. So that's just the answer. That's very straightforward. So another way to approach a question like this to solve it very straight without kind of like going through all this mental stress is just saying, okay, for me to be able to get that, that would be 400,000, 400,000 minus 50% of 400,000. You see the same thing, right? So it's just like 400,000 minus 0.15 times 400,000, and that will still give you your 340,000. But for some of you guys that are preparing for question exams that is time conscious, that you need to kind of like answer this question real fast and all those things. So what you need to be very, very particular about is how to approach this question very fast. So that's where you'll be using this formula, and this formula is very, very important. This formula is for new price, and new price is given by 1 plus or minus R of the original price. Now, what is R? R is kind of like the percentage given. It's either an increase or decrease. So that's why it's plus or minus. So for this is a discount, right? Since it is a discount means a reduction in price. And because of that reduction in price, you can say this is going to be 1 minus R of the original price. And the original, let me just write original. So the discount given is, that's 1 minus discount given is 15%. In decimal, that's 0.15 of 400,000. right? And since you have that, remember, 1 out of 0.5, just like saying 100%, then subtracting 15% from it. So you'll be having about 0.85% times 400,000, and this should give you your 340,000 if you solve it right. So that's just how our mathematics works. It's very straightforward. And don't mind my handwriting, right? So let's look at another question. Let's look at another question. So this question says Rachel wants to buy a car for 25,000. What will be the new price of the car if she receives a 6% discount? Now remember, it says she bought it for $25,000. Makes sense. Dollars. We're talking about dollars now. So which means $25,000 is it said 6%. Now for me to kind of like do it mentally, I don't want to use my calculator. I just want to kind of like solve it without stress and all those things. I can try to find 10% of 25,000, which means I'm going to move this zero to this side. So that would be $2,500, right? And since I'm getting $2,500 for 10%, I can try to get 1%. So 1% of 2,500, if 10% is 2,005, 1% will be me moving this zero back. So 1% will be $250, right? So since I know 1% is $250, I can get 6%. So that would be 6% will be 6 times $250, and that should be $1,500, right? So that's how it works. So for me to get how much Rachel is actually buying it, it should be $25,000 minus the actual price of 6% of $25,000, which is $1,500. That will give you what? $23,500. That is the actual amount. This is the actual price Rachel will be buying it. But for me to use my formula, I don't want to stress things too much. I can just say the new price, don't forget, is equals to 1 plus or minus R, which is of the original price. And don't forget, for me to get the new price, this one is actually talking about 100% of whatever, right? So which should be one discount. I'm subtracting 6% to be 0.06 in decimal times $25,000, and this should give me what? So if I'm removing 6% from 100%, I'll be having about 94%. So which means it's going to be giving me 0.94 of 25,000, and that will give me $23,500. So don't forget this. So we are going to be solving more questions after this. So thank you for joining.